It's such a pleasure to talk to you again about our work that we have in common, coaching, healing with horses, and especially about your book that is now available on Amazon. Yay! Congratulations. That's so awesome. But for everybody who is new to this, Tara is joining us from Hawaii. She is a fellow horse healer. She trained with Linda Kohanov, who also wrote a foreword to your book, right? Yes. And I have already read it. It's incredible. It's an incredible story about healing from cancer, about dealing with life in general, about horses, about mystic goddesses. It's just such a journey. And I'm super excited that you are here today with me again to tell us more about it, to maybe read to us a little bit from your book. But first, say hello. How are you today? How's it going? How is this whole craziness about launching a book affecting your life? How are you today?
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an incredible honor to be here and talk with you again. I am great. I just published my book in the last week, Grace, Grit, and Gratitude, my story about healing with stage 4 cancer with my horses. It's already a bestseller on Amazon, so it's very exciting. It's also very full-time. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of work in publishing a book, but it's really exciting. It's getting a lot of great reviews. Thank you for being a part of the helper team for me. And yeah, life is great. I live here on Kauai with my 2 horses, free on 3.5 acres. I live in an off-the-grid yurt with my other animals too, and just super grateful to be here and be alive after such a crazy health journey and just everything that I share in my book. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and it is really everything that you share in this book. I have read it, and we actually meet here for the second time, but it feels like I know you forever. And I know so much about your family, your story, what motivates you, what drives you crazy, what your dreams are, what your hopes are, because you write about all this so openly and so profound in your book. And that must be, I don't know, that must be quite an experience that so many people are reading this. And I mean, you have gotten incredible response. Like everybody loves it. There is already so many reviews on that book site. But how does that feel? Like, was that hard or?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's it's multifaceted. It's really exciting because I feel strongly in my message that cancer and other challenging situations can be, you know, fuel for transformation, for growth. So I'm excited that my book is being so well received. It's also a very vulnerable feeling too, because I share some of my most vulnerable stories in the book that only my closest friends knew. Mm-hmm. So it's also this feeling of, like you said, you feel like you know me so well already. It's like, oh my goodness, all these people I don't know and strangers are going to know my most intimate, you know, just who I am and these situations that were very hard for me. So it's some of both. Part of me, I like to be out in the open and share myself, but then part of me is very quiet and likes to go within. So there's a bit of a push-pull situation going on of like, yes, this is exciting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to hide. So, and you've caught me right after I published too. So this feeling is strong.
Unfortunately, I mean, I broadcast things, I teach things online on Facebook, on Instagram, and usually we get a good response because we're talking about things that we have studied. We're not inventing stuff. We're not slamming somebody else, but there are also haters. And sometimes they come in the most unexpected form and shape. And I just recently had somebody on my Instagram page criticize, not in a terribly bad way, but quite insisting. And I didn't have a lot of experience with that before, but I have to say it does affect me. And it was a video about an activity where I absolutely knew that she didn't understand it correctly. I'm not abusing my horses, and it's quite obvious in that video. So I was kind of fine with it. But I imagine that if somebody starts criticizing something about that, that is like a very deep, like to the heart. Are you?
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry you experienced that. That can be very painful, especially when you're coming from an authentic place. It's so true. When you put something out in the public eye, people can interpret it however they want, and you're open to criticism. I was diagnosed with cancer almost 5 years ago. So I've actually been used to receiving a bit of criticism. I chose a natural route of healing cancer for 2.5 years. And I was very outspoken in my belief system, I guess you'd say. And I was doing videos and blogging, and I had some really horrible things said to me in social media, Facebook in particular, that was very painful. So I've already had some experience with that, but I am very well aware that that can come on another layer with my book, and to try not to take it too personally, because it's kind of a crazy time to be alive right now, and everybody's a little bit more pushed to their level and liable to be critical and project things. So I'm trying to keep that in mind, but also, yes, knowing that, all right, everybody might not like my book, and that's okay too.
And that's okay. Yes, exactly. It is okay. And it's just unfortunate that now in these times of social media, people, instead of saying, well, I don't like that one, I put it aside, they feel compelled to criticize our work openly on social media sites. And that didn't exist before. I mean, right. If you didn't like a book, you just didn't read it, right? Or if you didn't like a person, then you didn't follow them or speak to them. So, but yeah, now everybody feels invited to share their opinion. And I assume that also, I mean, if you share your diets, your healing route, your thoughts, and all of that, a lot of people feel compelled to have an opinion about that. And I have to say that I was absolutely ignorant about cancer. Luckily, I do not have cancer in my life. So I had no idea, like no clue, like just some things from videos or movies, but not really. So reading this was such an eye-opener on all levels, like what you have to go through personally, how much choice you have in deciding, do I go here or there, that clinic, that approach, that there's so many decisions to be made, and they are very difficult decisions, and all the diets and all the money that goes into that. So for me, that was like a very big lesson on what that really means for somebody. So
yeah,
thank you for that. Thank you for
thank you for reading. And yeah, it can be very overwhelming to get a cancer diagnosis, because there are so many options for healing. And also too, everybody, like you were mentioning on social media, everybody likes give their opinion of like, oh, my friend did this and this. And so people get rather bombarded. And it's hard to receive that from the outside world, but also the emotional context too, of having to face your own mortality, because you don't really think about it before. And all of a sudden you're saying, wow, I might not have that much time left. And so it's a lot. It's a lot on a lot of levels. And part of the reason why I wanted to share my story is so other people can know they're not alone in their experience, because we don't really know how to handle it in our culture. Same with grief, it's we don't know how to handle the harder emotions and harder reality that ultimately all goes back to death, I think.
Yeah, right. And you share a lot of experiences about that topic even before you get your diagnosis, because your best friend also died of cancer, and you know, you were exposed to that from so many different levels, and you were sharing, you were offering grief rituals for your clients with horses. That's super interesting, and I'd love to hear a bit more about that. And for everybody watching this book is just, I think it's so fantastic because it's not patronizing in any way. You just share your story, and you don't even say you should try this, or this was the best for me, or nothing like that. You just share what is, period. And and that makes it maybe so heartbreaking at times. It's like, oh no, that can't be true. And and life throws one rock after the other into your path, and you just move on and tell us what happened without being critical, without being patronizing, without being overly positive, like I found the wonder cure, or none of that. It's really, I really like that about it. So would you tell us a little bit about those grief rituals with horses? Because that's also a little bit what I do. Like I do trauma therapy mostly with horses, and I teach other people how to do that, and I help them, I supervise their work. So I'm always super interested in other techniques and what worked for you. And then
Sure.
You promised that you would read a little bit from your book. Are you still up for that?
I am. Yep, I have it right here. Happy to read and share.
Awesome. So
yeah.
how did you go about the grief rituals? Were these like long workshops, or did you work one-on-one with people? How did you do that?
They were pretty much day-long events where people would come from 9 to 5, 10 to 6, some format like that. And I combine the work of Linda Kohanoff, which I was trained in, the Kona Quest work, with some of the work I figured out about what would be helpful to do a grief ritual. There's a great book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow by Frances Weller. And I read that book after my best friend died, and it really spoke in a very poetic, beautiful way to the immense amount of grief I felt after her death. And after her death, I realized there was no place in our culture for grief. It was just pushed away, like, well, your friend or your partner died a couple months ago, aren't you okay? And so I was inspired to create these events where people could have a safe space to express their grief. So yeah, it was pretty much a day-long event, and people would come, and I would help them tune into their bodies, because as you know, we're so mind oriented. We forget about our bodies, which is such a gift to be around the horses, because the horses tap us into it. And we would do some art, some mandalas to help them drop into their subconscious. I would have them, of course, be around the horses, which, as you know, is incredibly calming and cathartic and healing. We would do a stone ritual, which is in Frances Weller's book, which is about speaking our grief and putting into a bowl in a way to release it. And then some other exercises too that seemed very powerful and relevant. And it was beautiful. I mean, in that day-long event, people touched into grief that they didn't know they even had. You know, they would come from the grief over losing a partner, for example, and then realize, oh my goodness, I'm feeling childhood grief from something that happened from my mother or my father. So it helped move through a lot of the trauma that they didn't even know they had. And it also helped to connect people in a community setting, because when you're experiencing grief, it can be tremendously isolating. So it helped people know, like, oh my goodness, I'm not alone in feeling this heavy feeling of grief. This person here is feeling a similar thing. And so it was so beautiful and such an honor to witness. And the horses were such wonderful holders of sacred space. And I was really fortunate too. I was invited to go to New Zealand, and I did a grief ritual there at a horse conference. And yeah, it was very, very powerful work that I did for a few years.
Yeah, you know, Gabor Mate, who is a specialist in trauma, also in grief, and he just released that wonderful movie, The Wisdom of Trauma. Have you seen that?
I have not. No,
You
I
have
know
to.
about him though.
They're offering different events to stream it for a donation, so it's highly recommended. And at some point he says it's not about, or children don't get traumatized, or people don't get traumatized about what happens to them, but because they're alone with the hurt. And that connects really well to what you just said, that people are isolated and don't have anybody to talk to, because death and grief and dying and illness is something that we don't want to hear about. Most people just like push it away and can't deal with that. So somebody who is in that position really needs a safe space where they can actually share it. And as you say here, that other people have maybe similar strategies or different strategies, but that they're not alone. And there is just no grief curve as we would love it to have. It's a craziness. It's like going back and forth, and things come up again and again in different ways. And some days you want to hysterically laugh about it, and other days you want to cuddle in your bed and not talk to anybody. And it's both of them are normal. And wanting to talk about it and not wanting to talk about it, and feeling depressed and feeling hyperactive, all of it is normal, and people need to learn that. There's not much space for that. And as you said, the horses with their amazing heart rate, with their calmness, with their connection to us, seeing us, letting us be, are so helpful in these environments.
So true. So well said. Yes, that's interesting too. You mentioned the whole grief curve, because I used to show my participants this, people think grief is like you go from one end to another and it's a stage, but I would show this photo and it's just exactly like you said. It's like all over the place. You could be feeling good one day, another day you're totally destroyed. So, and that's normal. And it goes on, sometimes for years. And to embrace that feeling is so important, rather than to push it away and try to feel happy.
Right. So in these groups, how many people did you bring together?
The most I would have would be about 10 people. Mm-hmm. I mean, like when I taught in New Zealand and I did an event at another horse conference, there was, I think, up to 40 people, but I did a very small version of it. Because with a day-long event, I really wanted to be able to hold space for everybody. And I had an assistant who was wonderful. And it's deep, sensitive work. So I felt like it was important just to have a smaller group, and also with the horses too, because I didn't want to overwhelm them as well.
Yeah, right. I also prefer the small events, like maximum 12 participants. It's if we allow the horses and the participants to go really deep, they will, but then it has to happen in a smaller group. If there's 30 people, we can't give that space to everybody individually. Right. So yeah, smaller groups are better. I think the same way. Yes, definitely.
I wish I could experience your work. You're such a fascinating person.
I think we will at some point. We will meet personally here or there. I'm very confident about that.
I would love that. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. So Tara, you also mentioned that work with the horses in your book, right? Like it weaves through the story all the time, and there is some difficult moments when you have to let go of horses, when you have to sell your farm, and then exciting moments when you bring them to your island. Do you want to read a part of your book for us?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, so as you were saying, I weave the horses all throughout my book. I mean, the basic message is how my horses have helped me heal through all these crazy events. So I'm just going to read a part in my book. It's actually near the end. I will just show, well, my light's kind of funny, but.
No, we can see it. Oh yeah. Nice.
Okay. It's a photo of me with my Mustang Comanche. It's called Living with Horses.
Yeah. And so for our viewers here, you say how the horses help me heal. And I mean, that's like one of the points where somebody can come in and really destroy us. We do healing work with horses and coaching work with horses, but that doesn't mean that the horses have some magical abilities and will just like wipe away any illness that somebody has. What they do is they touch your soul and they help you figure things out. They help you get to the root of a problem. And you too, as you write in your book, believe that that there is always a psychological, emotional component to things that happen to us. Not all of it is emotional. Like, we don't want to say, you know, you were to this or to that, and that's why you got cancer. That's not helpful. But there are components of our personalities, and we all have them, that make us prone to this or that illness or to some things that happen in our life. And the horses can help us figure that out. And first of all, they can help us, as you said in your grief rituals, to calm down and to be open and to be present. And they do that by just being there, right? So they have this heart rate that is so calming. And if they are calm horses living in natural environments and herds, if they are not treated violently, they have this calm state of mind, and they create a magnetic field that will extend to us, and we tend to adapt to it. So there is science behind that. And there is also a lot of empirical knowledge that we can't really explain. Like, why does it make me cry if I look at that horse? I don't know. Somehow they can communicate. I think horses communicate in like telepathic emotional messages. That's what they do in the wild. And that reaches us. And we can also do that with them. And it's backed up by science. There's a lot of like sensory things, a lot of hormones woven into it. And they just touch our soul and help us evolve and get to the root of things. So yeah, everybody who has had a session with us, with you, with me, knows that, has experienced it. And yeah, and that's why we say that horses contribute to our healing, even cancer.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you explaining that. Thanks for putting words to it. It's a hard thing to explain. I always stumble when people say, well, what do you do? What is the work you do? Do you do therapy on horses? And so you just explained it really well. And I think it's important to have that disclaimer too. So people understand it's a full faceted issue. It's not just one thing.
Right. And it's really active. It's not like, I mean, there's other therapies where you inject frog poison or I don't know, which is in the end maybe a bit more passive. So there's a substance, or bee therapy, there's a substance that will do something to your body. But with the horses, it's you have to be open, and you have to actively participate in that and go down that path. That can be a bit hard. I mean, healing is not easy.
Right. Yeah, it really requires you to face your shadows and the things, the emotions that's hard to look at, the traumas, whatever it may be from your past.
Yeah.
It's a very full spectrum. All righty. Okay, living with horses. My life took on an incredibly rich cadence after Blue and Comanche were back on the land again. I found a deep satisfaction in the everyday care of the land and animals. Taking care of horses with the necessary feeding 3 times a day, daily poop scooping, which I know you know very well, and tending to a sick horse is hard work, but it gave my life meaning and purpose. I loved it. It was a true labor of love. Being close to the land that my prudent great-grandpa purchased in the 1920s was a potent act of returning to my roots. The Aina, I share Hawaiian words in my book because part of my book is set in Hawaii and my family is from Hawaii. Aina means land. It's like the power of the land, it's land. So the Aina nurtured my soul. I felt like my body could relax into a deeper level of trust. This was the most profound healing I could possibly experience. There was no way I could have dropped into the same sense of belonging while living in California. My island home possessed the magic I need to defy all medical expectations. I would often close the gate to the main road adjacent to the property and let the horses roam freely on the land. This meant that I would wake up with Blue or Comanche standing right outside my door, waiting to be fed. It is my slice of heaven to observe horse behavior free of the confines of a barn, stall, or other self-contained human creation. Sometimes I felt like the Jane Goodall of the horse world, except my two boys had been domesticated. I'm sure if Blue could, he would wander right up to the stairs into the yurt, plop down on the sofa, and start talking story. Hawaii has a languid lull to the language where people spend time chatting without a rushed sense of time. This is one reason why island life is deeply relaxing and healing. So, and then I just go on to say, the horses and I had many enchanting moments together. And then I go on to explain a really magical moment where they really were connecting with me in a profoundly powerful way.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so that's a little slice of it.
Thank you so much. It's there are so many similarities. I mean, I live in the slowest paced country, I think, on earth. Also, Ecuador, South America is also very much into this direction. And yeah, we have space here. The horses can roam around even though they are domesticated. But yeah, I can super relate to what you're writing. And in that sense of belonging and that sense of, you know, somebody needing you and appreciating your presence and doing that physical work and outside and working with the land, but without being needy. I think that is something that the horses really gift to us, because it's so different from a dog. Like a dog can love you, but they're all over you. But the horses, they just stand there and wait for you to come. And they are not pushy. They are not intrusive. Their presence is different, and it feels different if they are like in tune and connection with you. It's very different from any other animal that I have lived with or cared for. And yeah, I don't know, can you explain that with, like, what is it about horses? What is it about horses?
Yeah, it's a wonderful topic. I feel like they're like sentinels. I think of them as sentinels of the soul. They're just standing there and they're present, and it's pretty amazing. I wonder if you experience this too, but when I'm going through some inner turmoil because of whatever reason, I'll notice that they are, if I'm in the vicinity of them, that they're standing close by. Mm-hmm. And almost in this samadhi, deep trance state. Mm-hmm. And I can tell that they're holding energetic space for me. I know energetic has like a woo-woo term to that, and Linda talks about that in her book, but it's almost like they're connecting with me on a whole nother level that we humans are not often aware of. And it's almost like they're helping me process whatever difficulty comes up. Have you felt that with your horses too?
Yes, absolutely. And from very different angles. So sometimes when I facilitate a session, like when I started years back, and I was not grounded or in a good space, the horses would rather work with me than with the client. So I learned, the horses taught me. I had one session where I should actually have canceled the client, and the horses were just standing there, building a circle around me, like no, you are not ready to do this. And I was not actually. And now I have learned to, use their power for me first before I facilitate with somebody else. And as facilitators, we really need to have our stuff together. We cannot we cannot do this work if we are not feeling calm and kind of neutral about the situation ourselves. And then I also have this, like I pick up kind of messages from them. I don't trust it 100% often. So I will pick up something and then I will analyze it. And then I will be like, well, you know, maybe I should call the vet, or maybe I should ask my animal communicator friends, or investigate it. And very often I come back to the first intuitive knowledge I just had by walking through them. Yeah.
It's a process of unlearning that whole way of trusting our brain and trusting our intuition. So.
Right. So Tara, for somebody who wants to read your book, how would they go about?
Well, they can just go on Amazon and put in Grace, Grit, and Gratitude, and it should come up. You can put in my name, Tara Coyote, and that'll come up. Yeah, it's there on Amazon in Kindle and print book. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of social media pages, Facebook pages, Instagram, websites, so YouTube channel, all my information's out there. So yeah, if anyone wants to check out my book and write a review, I'd be so grateful. It's really exciting to get this message out into the world. I'm also very passionate, as you are too, about what we talked about, horses being a healing force. So I feel like the world really, really needs healing now. And yeah, the horses are stepping up in a new capacity to help hold space. So I want this message to get out. And I just also want to mention too that 10% of the sale of every book is going to the Wild Beauty Foundation. It's a foundation it's created by Ashley Avis that helps support the wild Mustang cause in North America. Mm-hmm. So I'm very passionate about that as well, and educating people about it. So yes, if you go on Amazon on the link, I talk a little bit about it there.
Yes. Oh, that's a really good cause. I just hope we can inherit these wild Mustang herds to our children. That would be so bad if they disappeared, really. Yeah, Tara, I wish you all the best for this exciting journey. I mean, the book just launched, so now I guess you will be, you know, doing interviews and talking to people. Maybe you'll do a tour and yeah, dive into that world of being a published author. So congratulations. That's so brave. That's so amazing, really.
Thank you.
We will stay in touch through our social medias and hopefully talk again soon. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best, and give a hug to your beautiful horses from me.
I will. Thank you so much. It's been a joy to chat with you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Have a nice day, Tara.
You too.